Hello and welcome to Marie's World of Writing, where I'm about to do a live interview with Danielle Orsino, author of Birth of the Fae. This is a gorgeous little novel that is just celebrating its 1 year anniversary, and she is going to be joining me in a moment so that we can talk all about her work. This is always the fun process, getting the actual joining going on. Hey, how are
Hi.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. We got the major hurdle done, so now
Yes.
we'll
Yay.
from here. Well, first and foremost, I have to give you a huge congratulations. Anytime you get a book out there, it's amazing. And this is 1 year anniversary?
Yeah, it's coming up. It's actually coming up in 2 weeks. June 29th will be our year anniversary, our little birthday. So I'm very excited.
Oh my gosh. Now, you must have like a creative team behind you here. Is there like a production of people making all of these gorgeous little things, or do you?
No. I do have some fake friends helping though. I have Stephanie, obviously, who's been wonderful, helping me out. Jacob Rivera. I have a bunch of little people, Morris, who are helping me out, who are my little fae, kind of running around helping. But when it comes to like the bookmarks and things like that, I have a phenomenal illustrator, Pandy Van, who did my dragons, and Morgana Anagram, who did the Desdemona Queen Aurora picture that you saw.
Okay.
That's the latest addition to our illustrations. She did like an amazing job bringing the oath to life. But my dragon illustrator, Pandy, it's almost a year actually. I met Pandy, I think in October, and she's the one who brought who gave my dragons their color. I always joke around. Actually, it's been over a year because I put her in the book dedication. So it's been over a year since I met Pandy. But that's pretty much the Fae faction that's helping me out. It's just us kind of making this all happen.
That is so cool. I mean, it takes a team. Like once you get on the writing side of things to get
Mm-hmm.
from just the words to, I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
have a world right now. You have a whole, it's
Yes.
fantastic. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Gorgeous. It came in the most fantastic packaging. I was like, oh, I loved unwrapping it.
Oh, thank you so much. I like kind of bringing the veil forward a little bit. So I feel like when you get it, it's like you're opening up that little piece of the veil and then stepping into it.
Hmm.
So I want to kind of, give anybody who's going to take the time to read the book, especially bookstagrammers, anybody who's going to take the time to review it, just give them that little extra push to say thank you, because you have a bunch of books to choose from. So the
Right.
fact that you're picking Birth of the Fae, that means a lot to me.
I love it. That is so cool. Now, I mean, reading has evolved, I think. I mean, do you feel the same way now? You do. You have to have a reason. You need to be
Yes.
something a lot different than what it was when we were kids.
Mhm.
Now, when you are going after this, like, how do you feel the market has changed in the fantasy world from what
Oh.
you appreciated as a kid to what
Mhm.
you're selling to now? Do you think
It's definitely evolved. It's changed a lot, but I think it's also changed in a good way. Independent publishers, self-publishing. I know there's a lot of authors that look down on it, like, oh, now anybody can publish a book. But I
yeah,
think it's a good thing because more voices, more diversity is great. I don't think it should be this closed, narrow market. I think everybody should have a voice and have that chance to tell their story. So I think it's great. When we were kids and reading, it was so narrow. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have this literary pedigree like, oh yes, Jane Austen, that's my favorite. No, I was a comic book geek. I still am. Give me a good Chris Claremont, Days of Future Past, Dark Phoenix Saga, Greg Rucka, who wrote the Haikatisha, Wonder Woman graphic novels. That's my bread and butter. I
oh,
love that kind of stuff. So I would rather read that per se than some of, the literary works that people are like, oh, that's where authors should come from. No, my first real foyer into the fantasy world was The Secret of Nim as a
okay.
kid. I adored that book. The minute I read that book, that was the first time I could picture that, something happening and really being like, this is amazing. This transported me. So I think, you know, the more voices we have out there, it will capture someone's imagination. And then that gives birth to the new generation of writers. So I think now that everybody has a chance to tell their story, it's wonderful. And audiobooks, you know, audible.com, I think all of that stuff is great. It's just a new way to do it. And I'm kind of excited to see what else can possibly come of the future in technology.
Oh, for sure. It is. I am so excited to see what happens 10 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
where artists are controlling the narrative,
Yes.
and hybrid publishing really is taking authors forward. People are just saying, I'm sorry, but
Mm-hmm.
you to the regular publishers because it's just not.
Yes. I don't think it's, I think it's stifling to a point. Because I know even when I was querying, I had people that took, that were interested in what will be possibly my fourth book. And they were like, okay, so we're going to take your two main characters and we're going to make them 18 years old instead of 40. And we're going to do this. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, just back up a second. I was like, first of all, I should not be writing young adult. Like, I don't really know what's hip and cool. And, you know, nobody wants me on Twitter. So back up a sec. But they got into the marketing machine of this is what's selling. We're going to make you the next Twilight. And I'm like, but I want to write for this, you know, this is what my story is.
Yes.
And I think sometimes once the big machine gets you, you can lose sight of the creativity. So I think hybrid publishing and that independent feel, it allows a little more freedom of creativity. And I think the big publishers will eventually catch on and be like, okay, we got to kind of let you have your voice.
Yes.
But right now they're still a little scared. So they're kind of closing that gate. And that's where I think the Bookstagram community itself is so important, because they're giving the smaller guys, kind of like myself, that voice to say, you know what? Yeah, that's great. Like, don't get me wrong. You know, Sarah J. Maas, Cassandra Clinton, they're great. They're wonderful. They have their niche. But here are these up and comers, and we're going to kind of level the playing field and give them a chance to speak where maybe they normally wouldn't have that shot. So that's where I think that Bookstagram community is so important. And that really helps us, the smaller guys coming up. So, you know, I think it'll all even out eventually. I don't know how long it's going to take, but eventually.
Yes. Well, at least we're here for the ride. We
Yes.
have to be the tide, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely.
For you, when did you actually start having and building this world? Like, what is the, from inception to where we are now in your journey?
Well, originally, this was an oral story I told a patient who was undergoing Lyme disease treatment.
Okay.
So I did not set out to write a story. Like I said, I am not a classically trained author that I was like, one day I'm going to write a book. No.
Right.
Totally did not come from that. I'm a competitive martial artist turned nurse. So this was not in my realm. You know, my father will joke that in second grade, I said I was going to be an author. But by third grade, you know, I was back to being like, I'm going to be Wonder Woman one day. So you can't really take what I said, you know, in second grade like as gospel. I was treating a patient who was undergoing these long IV treatments. And one day he just said, look, Danny, I can't do this anymore. Tell me a story, do something, like entertain me while I'm sitting here in this chair. And the birth of the Fae came out of my mouth based on something he said when I said, you know, tell me something about yourself. And he was like, well, I was recruited by the CIA straight out of college. We cracked a couple conspiracy theory jokes, went back and forth about Area 51. And then I said, well, you know where Lyme came from? And he was like, oh, Plum Island. And I'm like, no, out of my mouth came the Fae. To this day, don't know why I said it. And he was like, well, who are the Fae? And I'm like, come on, a big CIA agent like yourself, you must know. We got onto the subject, and I told him that, you know, fairies were angels that were locked out of heaven, who, you know, got involved in the war between God and Lucifer, and the story just started to flow. So every time he sat in the chair, I told him another chapter. Once again, not thinking I'm going to sit and write a story someday. It was just, let me keep this guy engaged. So I would just take things from the IV room. Like we had, the doctor had a big black lab. So the lab lumbered into the room, and I was like, oh, and King Jarbok had this big dragon and he was black. And, you know, I just kind of like pulled what I could. And when his treatment was done, he's like, Danny, you got to go write that story someday. And I'm like, yeah, sure, one day. You know, once again, talk. Yeah. And then eventually I sat down and wrote it because there were other things that happened that, you know, I had to leave nursing. So I sat down to write the story. I started writing this story in like 2016.
Okay.
And out of that, in 9 months, I wrote the first 3 books, the first 3 drafts.
Oh my gosh.
Not saying anybody wants to read those first 3 drafts in 9
Right.
months. You know what I mean? Not saying they're any good, but I got those done. And then we started kind of massaging it and working the story out from there. But that's how the whole thing started, was just a patient I crossed paths with. And to this day, I still talk to him and we
Yeah.
joke about it. And he's kind of excited. He keeps saying, when are you going to, when are you releasing book 4? Because he jokes that that's his story, since he's the main character in book 4.
Oh, cool.
That, he's like, when are you releasing that one? Because that's mine. And, his literary persona, his alter ego's in that one. But that's really where it came from. And I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned the process as I go.
Right.
So as I'm going, I can tell anybody who sits there and says, oh, I want to write one day, just write. That's what I can tell you guys. Just sit down and do it. Don't think one day I'm going to do it. You just have to sit down and try it. That's the best way. It's one of those things. It's kind of like, you got to just jump into the water when it's cold and submerge yourself. That's kind of writing.
Yeah. It takes 10 years to master a skill, and you're going to suck for.
Oh God, yes. You're going to be horrible. I guarantee you are going to be horrible. You're going to make horrible mistakes. Like, you're going to go back and look at what you wrote and go, this is ridiculous. Yes. And you're going to find misspellings and things in your book and wonder, why did I do this? But you have to realize that's where you were at the moment in time when you wrote that story. Right. That's an encapsulation of your personality at that moment. You have to just take it in and be like, okay, that's okay. And realize you get better with the next one and better with the next one. And just keep moving forward. My editor, Cleet, told me, he's like, don't be too hard on yourself. He's like, the first story you write, is it the greatest thing ever? No, but you got it published. He's like, and it's so good for where you were in that moment in time. He's like, treasure it and keep it close to your heart, but don't beat yourself up. And that's what I look at writing kind of like being in karate. Here's my white belt, here's my yellow belt, and keep going. And the fact is, I'm never going to get my black belt. I shouldn't, because I should always be improving. And that's how I'm looking at it.
That's such a healthy mindset. And like, kudos to you for having healthy people surrounding you to give you that level of advice, because that is what people desperately need to hear. Keep going. Oh, okay. I was afraid I was losing you for a second. And I know that, like, the fortitude that one develops through training, endurance, martial arts, that kind of thing is definitely going to give you the fortitude that you need in writing too. I mean, do you have any like parallel things that you took from that and like infused into your writing?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I've had my crying moments. I have had my, oh my God, this is the worst review ever. I've had those. Totally had those. Especially as I've learned publishing a book during COVID. I got the advice of, it's the greatest thing you could ever do, to, oh my God, what the hell am I doing moments. I found misspelling. I found all those mistakes in the book. I continue to find them. I've learned, first of all, do not tell your copy editor you're dyslexic. They will not do the job you think they're going to do. That is the first thing I learned. Lesson number 1 on the list. Little things like that I've totally learned. I've learned, as Cleet told me, do not go on Goodreads. There's things I've learned. You're not gonna please everybody. Your book is not everyone's cup of tea, regardless of how many people tell you it's wonderful. What I've learned to do is, when you look at your reviews, take the absolute best, take the absolute worst, and throw them both out, and go midline. That's the best thing you can do. Do not think you're the greatest, and don't think you're the worst. If you get stuck in that, it's just not a good place to be. And I am somebody who, because I was a competitor, the thing with martial arts is, if you do a form, you get your scores right then and there. And then you talk to your judges afterwards, and they're like, okay, you could do this better, you could do that better. But there's a tournament the following week, so you can fix that next week.
Right.
No problem. Once you write it, no, you can't. It's published. That's it. There's no fixing it. That's the way it is. Yeah. That was a little difficult for me to learn. So I'm still working on that and taking critiques and things like that. The problem I have, and my editor jokes with me, is I'm the opposite of most writers. I take all the critiques and go, okay, I should totally change that. And he's like, no, fight me a little bit. He's like, tell me you're not going to change it. He's like,
Yeah.
you know, but because I'm not classically trained, I think everybody else knows best and I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So those are some of the things. But from what I've taken in martial arts, as you'll read later on in the Birth of the Fae series, I invented a martial art that the Fae, you know, do. So I sat there and played with it. My fight scenes are probably a little more detail oriented than most fantasy writers, in the sense that I go out and then I actually do the fight scenes. And that's the first thing I do, is I grab somebody and we choreograph the fight scenes and videotape them.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, the body goes like this. If I throw a punch or we do sword work, it's exactly what it would be because I've actually done this sword work or I've done this weapon.
Yeah.
So on those things, that's where my martial arts totally helps me out. Now, do I get read for filth on some of it? Yes, I've seen some reviews where like, she's angry and she's violent. I don't know why she's so violent. And I'm like, oh, but then I've read some reviews where they say stuff like, somebody said, oh, I hope Marvel's taking notes. Her fight scenes are better than most superhero movies. And I'm like, okay, cool. So
yeah, that one, the others.
Yeah, exactly. It goes both ways. So martial arts has definitely helped, but you know, it does help focus in a lot of respects as well. So, you know, double-edged sword. You're violent or you write really good fight scenes. Can't tell. I'll take it.
Found that your audience is like women, men, like what's your mix are you noticing?
I definitely get a mix. It's kind of funny. When I first was querying, I had a lot of the publishers tell me, can you change your name? And I was like, can I change my name? And they said, can you take it to a more generic DM Orsino? Can we make it Danny so people don't know you're a female? Because I have no romance in the first book. And a lot of the women expected me to have romance because it's a Fae book.
Yeah.
And, you know, they want romance. Okay, I get it. But I was like, no, I'm not changing my name because I felt that, you know, it's too stereotypical that as a woman writing a Fae book, we would have romance. I'm like, no, I write kick-ass fight scenes. I want everybody to know I'm a woman. Like, screw that. You know, I'm keeping that in there. So I just felt like, no, I'm not doing that. So I've seen a mix as a cosplayer. And people who know me from cosplaying, I have guys that know me on the con floor and they're like, oh, you wrote a book? Cool. I know you're going to cosplay as your character. So yeah, I'm picking this up and I want to see how you're going to do this. So yeah. I definitely have a mix. But, you know, the biggest criticism I've got is there's no romance. And that comes from, you know, people who also, I think, expect because it's Fae for there to be romance. So it's a mixed bag.
I kind of liked that there wasn't romance. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things that get bogged down with that. And life is not just a little love story. There's so grander things that people are achieving when they're above and being, I don't know. It's not like you're above it, but you are.
I didn't want the first one to be romance, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted the Fae to kind of develop on their own first and not have, I'm not saying there won't be romance down the line. Yeah. There is, but the first book coming out of the gate, I wanted everybody to feel like there was more going on and they had other problems than having the typical romantic trope thrown in there. And it's like, oh, now we have a love triangle, or now we have this one involved or that one. I wanted people to feel like there's more to it right now. And there's a war.
Yeah.
We've got a war to deal with. So let's kind of focus in on that and this abandonment. You know, at the end of the day, they've been cut off from their home. So when you have that going on, it's like, who's got time to be like, oh, let me go fall in love over there. You know, it didn't fit. So, you know, there's other issues.
So obviously you have the biblical ties here. As a writer, like, do you have a biblical background? Did you come from like a staunch upbringing where you already had these stories as part of your like dialogue inside?
I did. I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
I was raised strict Catholic. I took the sacraments. I did that. I did go to a religious college as well, religious university. But if you sat me down and said, you know, how do I identify Catholic? No, I don't. I remember getting in trouble going to, you know, religious instructions like right before my confirmation because I asked too many questions. I was constantly asking questions. Religion did not make a lot of sense to me. I remember thinking a God that takes attendance boggles my mind. You know, like I have to be in church in order for him to hear me. And I would just ask these questions. It just all didn't make a lot of sense. So I started reading a lot more because I wanted to understand what the hubbub was. In a weird way, it just seemed to me that we were making a big deal out of an unseen force. And that, for my little brain, I couldn't handle it. So I kept asking questions. My father was very supportive of me in that sense. And he was the one I was most scared about in writing this book. Because I'm like, yeah, I was like, he's really religious. And I thought he's going to, I can't believe, like I waited to the last minute to tell him what this book was about. He knew I was writing a book. He had no idea. So I kept like, you know, he'd ask me like, well, what's the book about? And I just kept saying, it's a fantasy book, Dad. It's a fantasy book. Like, don't worry about it. And then I was like, geez, I got to tell him what this is about. But he was very supportive. When I told him, he was just like, go for it. Cool.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of research on it. You know, when I found out that there were actually virtue angels in the Christian hierarchy, I was like, okay, I'm going to pull that. Obviously, the Power Brigade I made up. You know, that just came from common sense to me. Like, okay, archangels aren't going to really fight. They'll need their own soldiers.
Yeah.
So I played with that, but I just wanted to play on this idea of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't meant to offend anybody. It was just more of using it as a jumping off point.
Yeah.
And really, because when it came out of my mouth when I was telling the patient, I didn't plan on ever writing it. So once I made that commitment to write, I was like, well, now I got to do the research. And I did do extensive research on texts. And I looked and was like, all right, when I went further and dove deeper into it, when I wrote the book, I really had to decide what pieces I was going to pull and what I was going to leave alone. From that, have I gotten myself in trouble? Yes, I may be on 1, 2, 3 now blasphemy lists somewhere. There may be a letter to the Vatican asking for the book to be pulled. But, you know, at this point, yeah, who's counting? You know, I mean, it happens.
It's way more fun to be on that side of things. Get to talk to them.
You know what? I look at it like this. If you're going to take the time to write the Vatican over a fantasy book that has some angels in it, you know what? You got some time on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't foresee the Pope sitting down in all his popiness and being like, let me check out this book, Birth of the Fae Locked Out of Heaven. If he does, more power to you. Give me a call, bud. But
Amen.
I don't foresee my book really causing that much of an issue. The biggest problem I've gotten is that people believe it's going to have a Christian message. Right. And then when they read it, hello, chapter 1, it doesn't really have a Christian message. So I think they feel more like it didn't go the way they thought it would. So they pull back. But really, it's not about a Christian, non-Christian. It's not about that. If you read it, it's just about a problem we all face.
Right.
Loss of our identity. And what do we do to get it back? These guys just happen to have wings and happen to come from the clouds. We can all relate. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we've all had 2 friends arguing. And we're watching the argument happen. And we're sitting there saying, all right, if you 2 would just talk about it, this would be solved. That's kind of the idea here between Jarvak and Aurora. We saw the argument. We've all watched it and we're going, okay, just stop arguing and talk. And this whole thing will go away. But they both have their side and they're both so clear on their problems that nobody wants to talk about it. That's really it. They're just built up in their attitude. That's really what this is about. And I think it's something we can all relate to. I think whether you write fiction romantic comedy, whatever it is that you write in the fiction world, it really is about interpersonal dynamics. It's just, if you write fantasy, it's usually set in a magical realm.
Mhm.
And while you're arguing with the guy that you like, the girl that you like, or whatever, you're just getting a plasma ball thrown at you. Or you're a gnome, you know, or you're fey. It's really all about the same thing. We're just putting it in a magical world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only difference.
Do you feel that sometimes as I started to write, you know, of course I had like these themes that I was trying to get across, and even in my first book, this was kind of my overarching message. And then once I started reading more of, especially people's like debut novels, I'm like, we are all kind of on this similar trajectory of using novel to tell the same kind of story over and over again, that this conflict, when people butt heads so much that they just refuse, the whole world sort of reestablishes a new normal, and everyone that's affected, like, feel that way now when you're finally at this other point looking at other readers and going, oh my gosh, we're all saying the same thing?
I definitely feel that we're all trying to get a certain message out about humanity.
Yeah.
And about dynamics. I think it's all there. We're just all telling our point of view, and we're using literature to tell it and to give our side. I think that's really where it's coming from. And I've noticed it more and more, you know, reading, or I listen to a lot of audible books, love audiobooks. I just adore them. So when I'm doing it, I hear it a lot. I listen to it a lot, read it a lot. But especially when I've also done comic books, I think Alex Ross did it really well in Spirit of Truth, a Wonder Woman graphic novel. He did a beautiful, beautiful story about her perception of humanity. After she's been helping people for so long, she's becoming more disconnected.
Yes.
And so she goes to Clark and asks him, like, why do we keep helping and how do we reconnect? And he finally says, take the costume off and just go help and be alongside humanity and see. And I thought it was an interesting perspective that everybody has this feeling of being an outsider. And that was his perspective at that time. And it came at a very interesting point. It was right after 9/11 that it was released. And it was a really interesting point of view given that time frame, because one of the first scenes is she comes out of the invisible jet dressed in her outfit, and she's helping a Muslim country. And after she helps them, they stone her because of the way she's dressed. And that's her first, like, wait a minute, I just helped you guys. Like, what are you doing? But it's an interesting point of view given, you know, the sensitivity during that time.
Yeah.
And so I think just in general, especially from comic books, if you read them, that point of view on society is usually so poignant. So I think we're all doing it. We just have to clue in a little bit. I know for me, I wrote what I knew from an interpersonal standpoint. Like the character Hoggle is my father. It's my father to a T. Marco is my Uncle Ronnie because I have several uncles, but my dad can only work with my Uncle Ronnie in the garage. That's it. My dad can't work with anybody else because he's salty as all hell. He's salt and vinegar. Like, you just can't work with the man. If you've ever watched the Tuttles on, you know, the motorcycle show, CC, that is my dad. Like, my dad will yell, kick, scream, whatever. But my Uncle Ronnie, he could work with. So when I was creating the character of Hoggle, this metal gnome, I was like, okay, that's my dad. I need to give him an assistant. Well, my Uncle Ronnie. So that's what I wrote. So you're always kind of looking for the inspiration in real life. Serena is my best friend from high school, Jen. The title of the chapter, You Had Me at We Shouldn't Be Doing This, was pulled directly from a conversation we had when we were, I think we were 20 years old, and we broke into a water park at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And literally she had me keeping watch, and I went, we shouldn't be doing this. And she went, stop, you had me at we shouldn't be doing this, let's go. And I was like, okay. And we were with two other friends, and they kind of did the heavy lifting, and we kept watch. But that's what she was. She was the girl who, she was always a good girl. You know, she had ways to justify that she was a good girl, but she was always, it was a Thelma and Louise, when you're doing great, this is so good. She was the girl you always wanted to have. So when I wrote Lady Serena, it's pulled directly from our conversation sitting on the beach, having that moment. You always write what you know.
Yes.
And even the problems we had of her saying, now I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear. that was her. You know, this guy is not good for you. I'm going to tell you why. Or no, you ask him out, he's going to say no. He's not into you. Yeah, I know you don't want to hear it, but I'm going to be the girl who's going to tell you this, because if you go to somebody else, they're probably going to talk you into this. That, you know, that's her. So I think when we're writing, you just pull from what you know and what you see.
Heck yeah.
And sometimes what you'd like to see in your books. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Ever After with Drew Barrymore.
I don't think I have.
It's the retelling of Cinderella.
Okay.
She retells it in her way. But when I watched it, I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking, this was a princess who didn't need rescuing. She didn't need the prince. She wasn't waiting for him. It was the first time I saw a princess displayed in this way. She was really smart, really intelligent. She was book smart. She loved reading. It was Belle before Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Like, she wanted to read. She liked all this. But the biggest thing was she wasn't waiting on the prince to rescue her.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it thinking, I want more of that in my life. So when I wrote Aurora, I literally wrote her with Drew Barrymore in mind from that. Okay. So the line, just breathe, when Desdemona says, just breathe, my queen, I have your back, comes from when Drew is ready to enter the ball. And she's got her big wings on. Okay. And she goes, just breathe. And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of pull from what I wanted to see more in female characters. Mm-hmm. And what I wished was more. You know, as much as I pull from my idol Wonder Woman and things like that, I tried to pull from what I wished we saw in females a little bit more, instead of them always needing rescuing or waiting for true love. It was more like, you can handle this, go get it.
Yeah.
You know, and that was also why I didn't have romance in the very first book.
Right, right. So then I'm assuming that when you do get into the romance thing, it's going to be a different kind of romance then too.
It'll be a little more, I don't know if modern's the right word, but a little different in that sense. Yeah. Even, you know, I joke that I had to write a sex scene for book 4, and I sat there for about a month, staring at a blank page going, oh my God, I have to write a sex scene. I don't know how to do this. I just couldn't, it froze me. That scared me more than anything, writing that sex scene. But when I had to put, it's not really a sex scene for book 2, but it's close to it, I wrote it all in self-defense terms. Oh, there's not one genitalia, nothing. Yeah. It's written all because I didn't want to make it gratuitous, and I wanted to give it a different spin and a different feel. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, the love between the Fae is very different. They, you know, my Fae, I've been asked this before, you know, what are they? You know, are they non-binary or this? And I just say Fae fall in love with energy. They don't care about the package it comes in. They care about the energy they feel off each other, and then they move forward. So I kind of wanted to honor that even in how I write the sex scenes and the love scenes. They're very much in line with that. Yeah. But so the love is a little different with the Fae.
That's very cool. I think that's like a higher level of humanity too, when people truly are like, you fall in love with energy when you deal with people, when you're really, really in love with someone. It's not this, it is this, what's coming from them. And when you love someone on that level, yes, you do experience the person differently. And then the way that you would write that, I love that you threw in the martial arts terms. I can't wait to read book 2.
Yeah, it's different. We're going to get to book 2. We just actually signed a deal with Skyboat Media to do the audiobook first. So book 1 is coming out first in an audiobook. Okay. Which we're really excited about. That'll come out in August. It'll be on audible.com. So we're absolutely thrilled for that. And I can't wait because the gentleman who is voicing Jarbok is named Stefan. He's the owner of the company, and he called me, and the minute he picked up the phone, I went, oh my gosh, you're Jarbok. It was amazing. He sounded just like you could hear him. If the minute you heard him, there was no doubt in your mind this was the King of the Court of Dark. None at all. He sounded that great. So we're doing that first. We're going to let that go, and then we'll be moving forward with book 2. But it was really actually amazing. And I have to say hi to Tildy Ferry. Hi, Tildy. How are you? She's an amazing Fae friend. So I just want to say hi to her.
Yes. Hello to everyone. And if anyone has questions along this way, feel free to shoot them, like type them into the thing that queues up, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So type away.
But yeah, we're very excited about the audiobook. So that's our next, the next step in
Okay.
all of this. And then eventually I'd like to do a graphic novel. That's really what I'd like to do after the audiobook. I would love to do a graphic novel. That's where my geeky heart would like to go.
Do you get the comment that sometimes some of these you resemble your ladies just a little bit? Do you hear that?
Yes, we did those as all test shots. I did a line of test shots for all the characters while we were writing the book. So I took one day and I shot about 12 hours. I shot 5 characters.
Oh my gosh.
And just rolled through them as quick as I could to get an idea of how the Fae would look.
Yeah.
And we did that while I was in the middle of writing the book.
Okay.
So we did that. We did Lady Leonis. We did the Healer. We did Lady Danius. We did, of course, Queen Aurora. We did one of the Will-O-Wisps. We just tried to get them done. We did Chrysiopea actually as well. And just to see what it would be like to do the Fae. Then I've just done another shoot, which I'm really excited about, with this phenomenal photographer, Julia Giulietti. And I finally brought Lady Serena to life. I was a stand-in because Lady Serena should be done by at Jenna Con, since Jennifer is really Lady Serena, but due to COVID, I couldn't get her here.
Okay.
But one day I will. One day I will get her in that tail. But she will be Lady Serena.
Oh,
so I did Lady Serena, Desdemona, and then we did Aurora again in this corset done by Rainbow Corsetry that was made for me. So we did all 3, which will be debuting those pictures soon enough. We did it for Fae Magazine to go with an interview. So we'll be waiting for those, but those are the next 3. I like to cosplay as the characters because I then realize things that I've done wrong writing them in their costumes.
Oh,
like,
and kind of restrictions and limitations of the bodily.
Yes, exactly. I figure out real quick what I've done wrong. With Desdemona, we actually did the Harbinger swords, and I realized how big they are. Her cape, Desdemona would not have a floor-length cape. She only has a shoulder cape, and it should only come to her hip. Based from a fighting standpoint, little things like that you figure out, which is, is kind of cool. But we're going to move on, probably do the Court of Dark next, and I'm working on their armor. It's hard to make kyanite armor. In your head, it sounds great. Up here, it's a great idea. When you actually have to make this stuff, that's when things go a little wrong because I don't have special effects. I don't have a workshop. So I'm making a lot of this, and then, things get a little weird. So we're working on it, but that will be our next, or we'd like to do a Jarvok Aurora, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Do something cool.
Okay, so tell me about your day here. Do you wake up in the morning and just start doing this stuff from?
Every day's a little different. I never know what I'm going to write because I'm 4 books in. I'm on book 5, about 25 chapters in, give or take. So I'm always kind of looking on what I'm going to write. I also have a couple ideas for some offshoots.
Okay.
So I'm currently looking at doing a book based on Los.
Oh.
A little chameleon's guide to life. Because yes, Los has been a fan favorite. He's based on my Yorkie, Carlos.
Oh, too funny.
So, how a little 9-pound Yorkie became a gigantic, chameleon dragon is anybody's guess. But he deserves his own book. So we are doing a Los's Guide to Life, which is his life lessons on what he's learned growing up in the Court of Dark. Because he's technically been adopted by the Court of Dark.
Yeah.
So he's now seen a lot, and it's his version of, you don't have to, family is nice when it's blood, but it doesn't always have to be blood. So it's his version of, this is how he's lived through life. So the working title is Los's Guide to Life. Why blend when you can stand out? Lessons from a Chameleon Dragon. And he's going to kind of give you his version of just, you know, saving your energy, what you can do to just survive. And that just because you know, your family picks you, as the Court of Dark has picked him, and why that's such a special thing and how much he treasures it, but what he's noticed. And also what I've learned from picking this beautiful Yorkie and having him in my life. What have I really learned from him? I've learned a lot. I mean, every day I watch him, I learn something new. So it's everything that I've learned from him and that he's learned from me and vice versa. And I'm just putting it in dragon terms. So that's something. I think I have about 10 lessons, and I'd like it because it's adults can learn from it and kids can learn from it.
Yes.
So that's something that we're working on, and just how your life kind of changes when you have a little creature running around at your feet. And, you know, I have his sister, Lady Penelope, which you'll meet later on in the series, who's become a white deer.
Okay.
So she'll probably make her appearance in the book as well. So we're looking at that.
Of all of this, do you have like a giant board with like people and family trees, or what's?
Yeah, I have my little, you know, my little inspiration center. I mean, there's Lady Penelope actually right there,
Okay.
which Pandy drew, and that's actually my dog. That is Penelope, drawn as a white deer. She did an amazing job. I have an author index that I keep, which is every character that will be in the Vale, that comes into the Vale later on. Everybody, it's all the sigils. It's down to the Fey manners, the food they eat. I have kept it, and it's everything that I have even thought of is written in this. So it reminds me. I mean, even down to the people that I plan on killing. 25 books in, you know, like all who's related to who, it's all in there.
Okay.
And that helps keep things straight because I couldn't remember otherwise. As much as I like to think I can, I can't. You know, down to the crystals. Also the healers, their system, which you'll read about later in book 3, when you meet a healer who's actually coming up through the ranks, how they actually plan their healing, because they base it on the chakras, but it's a little different. They use the chakra mudras and the chakra mottos. Like, you know, instead of it's like, I like diagnosing. I'm a potions girl. So it's all the chakras based on healing factors.
Okay.
So, you know, that's somebody you'll meet later on who's kind of going up through it, and different things like that. You know, even if you take your left hand and you pass a drink to the left with your left hand, it's your way of politely saying you won't eat it or drink it. But, you know, little Fey protocol things I have written out. Eventually one day I'd like to release it.
Yes, for sure.
You know, because I think it would be something that's kind of cool.
You've got the rest of your life possibly that somebody else could pick up where you left off.
That's what I kind of want to do. I want to leave something that, you know, if somebody wants it, they could be like, oh, okay, let's keep going into the Vale, because I've left characters that I know still have more stories to tell.
Yeah. That
somebody could say, you know what, I like this character. I relate to this Fae. Or I relate to even this faction and how they do things. Yeah. You know, the Sephirium or, you know, Malascola's faction, they could have their whole other story about how they're living underground and they're making these incredible crystal structures. Someone else could take that and run with it. So there's different ways to go with it. Yeah. It's just a matter of whose imagination it kicks off. Yeah. But, you know, I'd like to eventually kind of talk about some of the other battles, or even I could still go back and talk about the war itself. So there's a lot to go. Yeah. I just have to decide where it's going to be. I do have a short story on how the dragons bond with the Fae and their riders, and the tournaments that they go through to play with. We have, I've got a lot of people asking me about Lady Danius and General Jaden and their love story. So there will be a short story based on the two of them. And
layout.
I love that. I love that the two of them have actually become these little cult characters, because we haven't even heard Danius's full story, and she doesn't come out till book 3, but I get people DMing me a lot about her, and wanting to know about the two of them. So we'll probably do a short story, a little novella based on the war and how these two have sent love letters back and forth. So you'll see what it's like to sit home and wait for somebody and have somebody on the front lines and then put the two letters together. So you'll get to see both sides of the war.
Yeah.
Because that's really never explored. You know, we can talk about farewell to arms and all that stuff, and that's nice. But, you know, I think from a woman's perspective, two women writing to each other and declaring this love, I think is different from a fae perspective. And I'd like to kind of explore that. And I get people asking me all the time about Danius, because when you do finally meet her, Jaden's faced her oblivion. It's been years later. So they want to know, what was she like when Jaden was around? And I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll explore that a little bit. So, you know, there's some offshoots I'm going to plan.
I like
but,
it.
You know, I kind of write here, I start writing something, and then I have it in one journal, and that kind of goes on the shelf. And then I go back and go, okay, all right, let me go back and write this one. And, you know, we plan a little bit here and there.
That is so cool. Like your mind must be in a million places. I love it. You have a really good question here that I wanted to get to, and
Okay.
let me see. Of course, it disappeared after I looked at it, but she was wanting to know how you felt about having tragic things happen to your important characters. Like, how do you process that when you...
Oh God, I cry like a baby. It's so funny. When tragic things happen to my characters, obviously I am the executioner, you know, or I'm whatever. And I have such mixed emotions about it, because I'm the person who's doing it. And obviously I have the power to stop it, but I don't stop it. So I have very mixed emotions, because some characters, if I kill them off or if I have to have something bad happen to them, there's always a plan down the line, but I still feel really bad. So it's really weird, because I feel like I owe them an apology.
Yeah.
And I find myself, good fairy 67, I have to say hi to. I find myself apologizing and feeling like, you know, I have to like write, and I'm sorry to them, which is really weird, you know, or I have to make it right in some capacity to them.
Like you can't just mercilessly do it, you know? I
No.
feel like I used to have an easier time where they're just like, well, I'm just going to kill this character and I'm not going to tell you why, and you're not going to get to resolve it. Whereas a woman,
Nope.
like, it has to have purpose.
Yeah, like I won't just kill you for the sake of killing you. I can, like, that's always the promise I make, you know, is like, I'm not killing you just because. There is a reason for it. Or sometimes I'll tell them, you're too good, you won't last, and you'll turn into something you don't want to be.
Oh.
You know, like the old Poison Ivy thing is, every hero either dies or becomes a villain. I don't want you to become a villain, so I got to kill you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, you don't want to see what you're going to become, so you're too good for this. I got to get you rid of you. I can't give too much away, but in book 2, there is a scene where I literally cried, and I couldn't keep rereading it, because it was choking me up. And I'm like, you know, there's certain characters, like, I know in my heart I can't kill.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to off Los. We all know that. Like, we know Los is going to live forever, so let's all just accept that fact. I'm never killing Los. Los is going to be an immortal dragon. Everybody accept it right now. We all know I'm not killing Los. You know, I just can't do it. So, you know, there's certain things, certain characters I know that I'll always find a way to reinvent. But I feel like I have to say sorry, because they live in my head. And I joke that they all come with their own theme song, and they all have resonance. So I just, you know, like Indigo, who you'll meet in book 3, she's part Eloise at the Plaza, and her nickname became Little Big Mouth. And she came in singing Cherry Bomb like at 3 o'clock in the morning through my brain.
Yes.
And it's just like, excuse me, go write my story now. I'm here. And I had no intention of writing children all in my book. And she came in like skipping rope across my brain, playing Cherry Bomb. And it was 3 o'clock. She's like, get up, go write my story right now. I am now a character in your book.
Isn't
and I was like,
one thing about being a writer? Like,
I was like, when did I become like this?
So when, I have to ask, because I'm in the same boat as you. I'm a dentist, not a writer, but I am a writer too. And it took me probably 5 years to all of a sudden accept that part of me. And
Yes.
it all happened when I finally published. Actually, it happened when I started interacting with other authors. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm one of you. We are the same.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, thank God. But how did that actually transpire for you? Like, what was the moment?
I am still not, I'll be honest, I'm still not there. I still have a hard time saying, oh, I'm an author. It's still very weird for me. Even I can be holding my book and looking at it. I can be autographing a book. And I still have a hard time going, no, I'm a published author. Like, cool. I will still find other things to say.
Yeah.
When people are like, what do you do for a living? I will still sit there and go, well, I do some personal training and I teach boxing and I do that. And I got into PA school. You know, I'll find a million other things to say before it comes around to author. Yeah. And I don't know why. I don't know. I joke that it's because I'm not on a bestseller list or I haven't sold 10,000 copies. I feel like that's always that bar, you know, that we set ourselves up, or we're expecting people to go, I haven't heard of you. What books have you read? You know, because there's a judgment that comes with it. And let's face it, we're all a little crazy. Just what it is. I'm sitting here with a tiara on my head, for God's sakes. I'm a little crazy. You know,
I miss your tiara.
Oh, don't worry about it. It's all there. This is from Enchanting Earth & Co. Jamie. She made the Aurora Tiara for everybody to see. You can go buy it. It's amazing. How great is that? With the Angelite disc sigil. Yeah.
No way. Oh
yep.
My gosh. Okay, we need a link to that. Or else I gotta have this on attached to.
Yeah, this is an official Aurora crown that she made. Yep, she sells it in her shop. It's amazing. But like, even with this on, I'm still like, I do this and I do that, and okay, you know, and I still have a hard time saying I'm an author. And I don't know why. And I think part of it is because I'm not, you know, you haven't made the Sarah J. Maas, you know, jump. I'm not Cassandra Clare. I don't have, because people make that comparison, especially in the fae fantasy world. Okay. It's very hard when you're going up against Shadow and Bone.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody's talking. It's on Netflix. That's what everybody's talking about. It's so difficult. But what I've learned to do is I got to just embrace, yeah, this is what I do. People read my book. They like it. You got to just, you know, so I'm forcing myself to go, I'm an author, and just own it. Yep. But trust me, after you put a fin on you, as I learned last week, and I'm sitting there with this beautiful Miss G designed crown of seashells and octopus points, and I'm in a mermaid tail that looks just like Serena's, and I'm laying on a beach with a big blonde wig going, this is what I'm doing on a Tuesday. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
You just got to do it. Yeah, it's just, there it is. So I think it's more about, we as authors in general have to stop equating ourselves to the J.K. Rowlings, the George R.R. Martins, the Sarah J. Maas's, the Shadow and Bones. That's not it. If somebody reads your book and comes up to you and says, I got lost in your book, you know what? For 5 minutes, I was somewhere else. And when I come home and I get into bed, I read your book. And it takes me away from my problems. And I can't wait for your next one. Or I'm doing this and I love your book. That's really all you can do. Because it's nice to want to be, you know, Sarah J. Maas or George R.R. Martin. But let's face it. They're 1 in a million. Not that you shouldn't hope and pray. It's great to do that. You should have goals. That's awesome. Yep. But let's face it, shoot for the stars. At least you'll be amongst the heavens. If you don't land on Jupiter, you're still, you know, you might land on the moon. Not so bad. At this point, I would love an anime. I would love an anime of Birth of the Fae.
Oh my God, right? That would be so cool.
I'm not asking for a live action starring Jason Momoa. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't love me some Michael B. Jordan acting like Jarvok. I'd love it. I'm not turning that away.
Yes, we'll get there. I'm right there with you.
I'm aiming for an anime right now or a graphic novel. But if I get the other stuff, that's cool too. But I just want it so when I walk on a con floor, I want to see a Jarvok walking around.
Oh, God.
I want to see an Aurora.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make a calendar of all the cosplayers dressing up like my characters.
Ooh.
That may not be J.K. Rowling's money, but I'm okay with it. If I can just have a house with my dogs, I've done okay. And I think that's kind of what authors we have to do.
Yeah. It's
You
creative
know?
work is happiness. You are living the dream.
Yes.
You know that, right?
That's exactly it. We just organically, we have to think of it as we made somebody's day.
Yeah.
Did we make 500 people's, million people's day? No, but you know what? If I made 5,
That's all that matters.
that's really cool, because I think that's what I was meant to do. My story may only be to touch 5 people, but those 5 people I touched on a deeper level.
Yeah.
That's what I was meant to do then. And then I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely fine with it, because my story has that message.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm okay. And I think that's, as authors, what we need to do for each other.
Yeah.
And I think we need to support each other more.
Oh my God.
That's lacking in the community. I think we try.
It's an exclusive community, and it is all about, you're not like, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out. I'm in. You know, I don't, and I'm just like, well, I'm sitting here on the outside, just chilling, you know, but, yeah.
I think that's, you know, I think, like, I've been asked, why don't I do more author exchanges, you know, to like read author books. And I've told them I don't do it, because what happens is I do it with some authors, and I've done it before, and I will not get on your writing. Like, if you're an author and you say, hey, can you read my book? I don't sit there and go, you did this and there's a misspelling on page. I'm just like, hey, it was a great idea. Yeah. Like, go with it. But you get some authors who then sit there and like grammar nitpick. And I'm like,
yeah,
we got a book published.
Yep.
That's what you should be celebrating. I think that's where it kind of comes from, that girl power, author power kind of thing. Yeah. That's what we should all be celebrating. If you want to talk to me about it on the side, by all means, pull me aside. Yeah. But don't write it in a review.
If I pay you to critique me too, then bring it on.
But yeah, that's totally separate.
We're sharing, and we're
totally separate.
Lifting each other. I am right.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be gleaned from negativity.
Yes. I think in general, the author community, we have to stop thinking we're all in competition to sell books. There are enough readers out there.
Oh yeah.
More than enough. Let's work on spreading it, because the more people that read, that just helps us as a society, because it's education. Mm-hmm. And that's key. Reading is not a privilege. That we have to get out of that time. Everybody should be reading. You should be able to transport yourself to another world anytime you want. Yeah. Reading is not a privilege by any means. Everybody should be able to read whenever they want, listen to an audiobook, however they want to get their excitement. Yeah. They should be able to get it. And if that means I got to hand out free books, I got to hand out free books. I'm cool with that. That means doing an audiobook. Let's do an audiobook. You know, let's gear up with other authors and get our stories out. But we're not in competition with each other, because we're bringing entertainment and fun to the world. Yeah. Let's go for it. Totally down for it. And that's why I think, like, comic books, all those things, when people are like, that's not real literature. I don't know about you, but like I said, I've read Dark Phoenix Saga. I've read Days of Future Past. Those Days of Future Past is one of the best comic books, hands down, ever written. And Chris Claremont was a prolific writer, is a prolific writer. I learned more from his stuff than I am sitting down and reading Jane Austen. Oh,
real literature. Oh, we're talking about old literature, and there's just a new world of people, and we have to keep. Yeah. You can't stop and stay stuck in some weird other.
You can't sit there and be like, oh, now Walt Whitman, and you know what? Like I said, give me some Stan Lee, and let's really look at old X-Men, which was well ahead of its time progressively for society, commenting on society and what was going on. You can't say fantasy, paranormal, urban paranormal, all that stuff. It's all coming full circle. So I think we can all really learn from it, and as authors grow.
I love
Definitely.
It. Okay, well, I am coming up here. I took a break to do this interview, so I got a 3 o'clock.
You got it.
This has been amazing, and as much as I would love to offer questions, I actually think we just need to wrap up.
You got it.
Your book is available on
Amazon, bookshop.org, and barnesandnobles.com.
Perfect. when I'm all said and done with this, this is going to hit YouTube, and I'll make sure we've got links to your crown, links to your books. It may take a couple
Don't
days,
worry about it.
everything up and running, but you have such an amazing future ahead of you. I can't wait to see where you are at in 5 years. Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm so glad you enjoyed the book. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, yes. Thank you, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you. Chaos be with you, as the Fae say. Thank you.
Yes, as you as well.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.